I made a community post telling you guys that I would be making a video answering some of your questions and giving you life advice on anything really, from relationship issues to friendship drama to just general existential crises. Whatever you wanted to talk about, I asked you to just drop your situation or story in the comments and I would include it in this video. And so that's what we're going to be doing. I just spent a couple of hours going through every single post. I think there are close to 40, and taking notes because I want to do you guys justice. Like this, I'm not taking this lightheartedly is what I'm saying. I wrote down stuff for every single one of you who submitted something, and if you did, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't think there's much else to say, because there is so much to say, because there are so many fucking submissions that I just need to get started right now, because I have a feeling this is going to be a really long video, and I want to get to everybody. But the last thing I will say is that I think I'm going to try and timestamp this in the description so that you guys can find where your submission is and where I talk about it if you wrote something under the post or emailed me. So, with that being said, I'm a little nervous because I don't want to give any of you guys shitty advice, but I did take some notes that I'm going to reference, and I am going to be reading off of my phone, just your guys' stuff, so I feel like there's nothing else to say. I'm kind of procrastinating because I'm nervous, but let's just get started. After I say this last thing, which is, obviously, I'm not an expert, I'm not a therapist, I want to be one, but I'm not. So, take whatever I'm about to say with as much or as little meaning and implication in your life as you want to. So, I know the value of having an objective person give you their opinion on your life. That's what my therapist has been for me, because I'm really bad about overthinking. So it's always been nice to hear somebody who has no involvement in my life. They're not my friend, they're not my girlfriend, they're not my family, they're not anybody to me. Tell me what they think of my situation. So, if nothing else, maybe I can just be a second set of eyes for you. And if you didn't submit anything, and you want to maybe try and help somebody out who left a comment, or talk about something in the comments down under this video, feel free. I'll try to respond to pretty much all of them, like always, but yeah, let's make this a nice, meaningful place for people to go through shit. I have nothing else to say now, let's go. First story or situation comes from Deep Time Unit 37, who says, I'm looking forward to this video. For me, I have become almost neurotically averse to meeting new dates or even new friends. I gotta open up my notes. I'm so aware of myself, and I'm convinced that people wouldn't like me if they knew the real me. Like, I can be very charismatic and engaging, but sometimes that feels like a performance, and I don't want to be inauthentic. I'm also very opinionated, and I feel like my judgment can be sharp. Like, I don't want to hurt people, but I also don't want to be fake nice just to have people around, you know? I'm lonely, and I crave community, but I want it to be real connection. I guess I'm just struggling with that almost irreconcilable conflict that the more authentic you are to yourself, the less people will relate to you, or vice versa. Or at least it feels that way sometimes. Okay. So, this person is kind of talking about that struggle between wanting to be yourself and feeling like as a result of that you don't get along with people as well, because they might be put off by, maybe being less friendly or outgoing or just willing to put up with some of the shit that people do. So, I can relate to what you're feeling, because I used to do this same thing, except I wanted to be friends with people so badly that knew I didn't get along with them or agree with things that they were saying or doing, or we just didn't have chemistry, I would make myself continue to hang out around them anyways because I just wanted to be friends with people. This was like 2-3 years ago when I was really going through it, and I just really wanted validation and to feel like I was friends with people essentially. So the first note that I took for you is that I would just try to remember the idea of quality over quantity, because while I completely understand that it is difficult to not have a lot of friends in your life, it can also be so draining to have a lot of friends that you really don't get along with at all, or just don't click with in the way that you want to. Whether that's because you have a stronger personality than them, or you guys just have different ideas of what you want to do with your lives, whatever it might be, it's okay to not get along with everybody. In fact, it's impossible to get along with everybody. But as a consequence of that, you kind of have to be willing to accept that you are going to have fewer people in your life. But that to me is ideal. Like, I talk to the same couple people every day, and I'm very happy because I get along super well with all of them, and I don't feel like I'm putting pressure on myself to be somebody that I'm not, blah, blah, blah. I'm not here to talk about me. The practical advice I would give to you is that despite the fact that you might feel like you aren't going to get along with most people you meet, you still have to try, and you still have to put yourself out there, because there is no way to make friends or go on dates and end up in relationships or connect with people if you aren't willing to put yourself out there at all, out of a fear of not getting along with the person. This is difficult, but you have to be willing to accept that those situations are going to come up, like you not getting along with somebody that you go on a date with, or maybe this guy that you know through another mutual friend that you hang out with and you just don't click with. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a reflection of you being a bad person. It's not a reason for you to stop trying and just isolate yourself and tell yourself that there's nobody out there for you, romantically or platonically. So, really what I'm saying is, it's completely okay to feel the ways that you do. And for me personally, I feel like being around fewer people that you get along with better is a much better situation than having a lot of friends that you don't really mesh with. But you still have to kind of put yourself out there and make the effort. And it's unfortunate because that might mean that you're signing yourself up for a little bit more short-term discomfort, but in the long run, that is how you find the people that you're supposed to hang out around. One of my best friends over the last couple years is somebody that I met at a time when I just randomly decided to go to Coachella, actually, and we met, and he's like a pretty secure person, and he has a strong identity, and he knows what he likes and what he doesn't, and who he wants to be around and whatnot, and I kind of felt the same. And prior to that, I had spent a lot of time in this one group of friends that I kind of got along with but didn't really, and I just, I tried to make the effort with them to talk and hang out as much as we could during the festival and all that, and we got along super well, but that came off the back of not really clicking with a lot of people. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I feel like you get my point, so I gotta keep it moving, but I hope that helped. Second user is Chris Lee Ricardel 6573. I know some of these usernames are going to give me nightmares, but he says, "Yo, Jacob, I have this chronic, crippling feeling that I am getting left behind by my peers, especially when I dropped out from college and am now pursuing a new course. They are graduates now. When I was a kid, I always felt competitive, and I hate that feeling, but I have this huge impulse to not be in the bottom of the barrel. How can I remedy this toxic mindset? Because I know we have our own paces and journeys, but why can't I catch myself myself with some slack or grace. So, this is what everything that you just said is basically describing me to a T. Over the past year and a half, I've really struggled with comparing myself to other people who are starting to get jobs and do really well financially, or move to new cities and make new friend groups, or travel, or, I don't know, do hobbies that are just cool. Basically, I compare myself to every living creature under the sun. So, there's this one particular person who I grew up with, and I'm gonna sound like a jackass, but this is the truth of it, and I know you guys have probably all experienced what I'm about to describe, but I grew up with this kid. We played baseball together. I was always more academically inclined than him. That's my nice way of saying I always thought I was smarter than him. We both ended up going to the same college. I think it took him longer to do his degree than me, and this wasn't somebody I was always comparing myself to, but just the other day, one of my other friends was talking to me about him and told me that this guy was planning on getting his master's degree this fall. He's going to get like his MBA or something. And all of a sudden, this kid that I hadn't thought about in over a decade probably was the largest piece of my mind. I was asking myself, like, fuck, how is he doing better than me in life? I thought I used to be, like, smarter than him. Like, I sound like such a piece of shit, but I always thought, like, oh, I think I'll end up in a better place in life than him. And that was because of other stuff, but you get my point. Comparison is the thief of joy. People always say that, but that is probably one of the hardest things to live by and actually acknowledge and respect. So, let me refer to my notes now. I don't know what it is that you're doing. You said you were pursuing some other course, but I think all you can do is continue to do what you are doing because you made that decision for a choice. Oh, Jesus. You chose this path for a reason, and I think there is some level of needing to trust your intuition while also acknowledging that you are always going to find yourself comparing yourself to other people. I think that if you show up every day and you try hard at what you're doing, you are going to end up where you need to be, and that has nothing to do with anybody else. Whether you finish this course and end up loving it and you're in a career or a job that you like, or you finish it up and you hate it and you gotta start doing something else, the quickest way to be unhappy with yourself and compare yourself to other people is by doing nothing. Because when you're doing nothing, all you're doing is sitting there and watching other people and what they're doing and comparing them to yourself and the fact that you're not doing shit. So, last thing I wrote is I have a massive fear of being a failure and of not living up to expectations or wasting my life. So, I know how you're feeling. This has never really helped me, but I'm gonna say it because it might help you. I think it's useful once in a while to remind yourself that all those people you are looking at and wondering how they're doing better than you, or if they're happier or more successful, are probably looking at you or other people and having the same questions and doubts. So, you are not the only one, and that is a good thing in this case. Trust your gut, continue to do what you're doing, and just show up every day. That's that. Okay, next up. Actually, last thing. There is no single one way to succeed on this planet. There are a million different ways to do it. So, the people you're looking at are on a different path. That doesn't make it a better one. Next up. Baby Dinosaur 323. I'm in a particularly shitty period of life right now as an almost 25-year-old. It's a transitional period where I've finished undergrad and grad school and no longer have the next stage of my life planned. So what? I just have to choose now. Do what I want. I guess my question is, as someone who's also in their 20s, how have you dealt with the unknown? breath, because whispering is hard. I guess I'm asking you to really sit in for the long haul with me on this one if you're going to watch the whole thing. Okay, so basically, how do you deal with life no longer being certain or guaranteed? This has been the hardest part of growing up and being in my 20s for me. All your life, everything is guaranteed. I know that's a blanket statement. I know it's not true, but bear with me. For these specific things, going to school, playing some kind of sports or having some structured activities, or for most people, at least in America, where I'm from, going to college. It's all kind of this pre-existing path that we are set on from the time that we're 5 years old. I talked about this in my college video. So, growing up, there is little to no anxiety about what you have to do next. You kind of know. Maybe you're not totally sure about it, but you have a pretty good idea of what you maybe should be doing or what you're told to be doing. So, what do you do when that is all gone and you have complete freedom, which is, as a kid and young adult, the only thing you want, the ability to do whatever you want. And then you get put in that situation and you realize, fuck, I could literally do whatever I want. What the hell do I actually do? So, here are my notes for you, baby dinosaur. I have not dealt with it the best, truthfully. But I feel like you kind of answered the question in your post. You just have to choose something. I have struggled with putting an immense amount of pressure on myself to make the right decision every time. As soon as I graduated, I felt like I had to find and choose the one activity or endeavor that I would want to do for the rest of my life. And as a result of that, I put so much stress on myself to make the best decision and not fuck up or fail or do anything wrong that I ended up doing nothing for a really long time because I couldn't figure out what to do. I didn't know where to start, so I didn't start. I thought, and I thought, and I thought, and I thought, but I never did. And I regret that, so I would advise you to do the opposite. Just choose something. I am sure you have at least one or two ideas about things that you could try to do, whether it's a career or a hobby or something. You just have to get started. I promise that is all you have to do right now. Obviously, I'm just as old as you, so I can't really speak to our futures, but in my experience, at least these last 6 months, I've gotten a lot better at executing the ideas that I have about things I want to try, or conversations I want to have, books I want to read, hobbies I want to go for, shit like that. And whether or not I ended up loving them doesn't really matter. It's the fact that I've become a lot more confident in feeling like I can do things that has helped me actually start finding things that I want to do. So don't put all that pressure on yourself to be perfect and make the right choice. There's probably not going to be a perfectly right choice. But making no choice is, I think, the worst thing you can do for yourself right now. So, yeah, that's kind of all I've got for you. But that is such a pertinent issue in my life. So just start doing something. It doesn't matter what, you just do it. Okay, next up. macsasmrx asks, how do you know when you've healed from a past relationship? When do you know you're prepared to begin another? Okay, let me get you my notes, Mac. So, I can definitely speak to this from my first relationship, which was a little over 4 years. It was about 4 years. The way I knew that I was actually over her is when I could think about memories together, things from the past, or hear her name brought up in a conversation, and not feel my stomach drop or like there was a lump in my throat. You know that, I know you know, that super shitty feeling when somebody brings something up that reminds you of him or her or them, and you feel this twinge of just the sharpest yet dullest pain and it's that healing is not linear. So, a lot of you have probably heard that, but you might go through a breakup or something bad, and it hurts really badly for a while, and then you all of a sudden have a couple days where you actually feel really good, and you feel like you're getting past the person or the situation, and then all of a sudden you are feeling like shit again for a week, and then a week after that you feel totally healed. It's not a straight line to feeling better. It is a very bumpy and turbulent line, but that line, those fluctuations, if you imagine a graph, think of this x-axis as 0, the y-axis as how good you feel, positive or negative. You see these fluctuations go up and down and up and down and up and down, and the gaps are so wide, you feel really great or you feel like total shit. Over time, those fluctuations get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually you're right along the x-axis and you just don't feel anything about it anymore. So, that is my long-winded way of saying it takes time, but part of the process is feeling shitty and then feeling better and then shitty again. I will stop cussing so much, I'm sorry. So, how do you know when you're ready for another relationship? I don't think you can ever truly know until you go start talking to somebody and realize that you're still not ready. That's just been my experience. I think you gotta get yourself back out there at some point. There's never gonna be a voice in your head or a definitive sign that tells you it's time to try something with somebody new. It's just something you gotta experience. So, yeah. Okay. Oh man, 23 minutes in. I think we're through 4 people. I am going to respectfully speed it up a little bit because I think I can. I think I'm going a little too long right now. Quick little water break. Okay, next up. This username is KKKKMMMM463. Lots of K's and M's. How do you find your purpose in life? And if you don't know how, do you decide what to do instead? And how do you motivate yourself? Okay, so just 3 of the most difficult questions in all of human existence. Thank you, MMMKK. I'm gonna refer heavily to the notes for this one. So, I always find myself asking these few questions, especially like, what is my why? What is my purpose? Why am I here? And I heard somebody say this a few years ago and didn't think much of it at the time, but something I have been asking myself lately to help answer this question is, what are the hobbies or things I do that kind of make me lose track of time, or at the very least make me forget about everything else I'm doing except for that activity? For me, it's been things like, I started running a few months ago. I told you guys that. I love having deep existential philosophical conversations with my friends and family and my girlfriend. I love editing videos. I like making videos of trips I go on or things I do with my friends and making these little like music videos. I might show you guys one someday. Those are the things that when I'm doing them, I always take a second and realize like, wow, I just did this for like an hour and I wasn't thinking about anything else. I wasn't thinking about my job or whatever else is going on in my life that I'm frustrated about. Now, this isn't me saying, oh, just because you have a couple things you do that give you those same feelings that kind of make you lose track of time. There you go. That's your purpose. I don't think it's as simple as that. But I would suggest just trying that out as a thinking exercise, because I am very much of the opinion that you can make a living doing anything you want on the planet. I think there are enough people with enough money and so many people with so many different interests that if you are very into something, it's likely that somebody else is too. And if you're a little more months ago, I think, and I didn't start consistently posting till just a few months ago. But like, this is something I really enjoy doing, and I lose track of time while I'm doing it. And there are a lot of people with successful ASMR channels who make money doing Patreon or ad revenue from their YouTube videos, or they sell merch, whatever. I think there is a way to figure that out, but I think at the very least, you don't have to think about it in a business sense, like, oh, how do I make money from this? Just ask yourself, what are some of the things that I really like doing, and what are some ways that I could maybe find more time to do them, whether that's professionally or just for fun. We are all very young. I'm sure most of you guys watching this are young like myself, and even if you're 10 years older than me, you're still very young. So I think that question of what is my purpose is answered over the course of many years and many trials and errors. So how do you motivate yourself? This is the last thing. I heard this quote from this guy on TikTok named Marcus. He has a brand called Mint New York, my favorite clothing brand. Mood follows action. Mood follows action. If you are the type of person who can get motivated before they do anything, please write a book, and I will be the first person to buy it because you're probably one in a billion. It is so rarely that you will actually get motivated or in the mood to do something before you do it. Those good feelings or those feelings of inspiration and encouragement usually come after you do the activity. So go do the thing, and when you realize that it makes you feel good afterwards, that's what makes you want to do it again. I think it's really hard to consistently motivate yourself to do something. I think you just gotta make yourself do it. Yeah. That was definitely not any quicker than the other ones. But next question. Okay. Oh no. These are getting out of order compared to my notes. Okay, whatever. Gotta restart my camera real quick. Okay, there we go. How do I stop hating myself? That sounds so stupid, but I feel like it's getting in the way of my life and the reason I'm not living my life. Basically, how do I become okay with being myself? Let me go find the notes. Oh, this was posted by a user called blindcherry. I need to stop saying user. You guys are people. I'm just trying to read this systematically and not fuck it up. So blindcherry, let me find you. Here you go. So how do you stop hating yourself? First of all, that's not a stupid question. That is actually probably my biggest single struggle at the moment. I have a lot of self-loathing and self-criticism and negativity going on in my head right now. And it's getting in the way of my life, like you said. And my therapist actually said this to me in our last session, 2 weeks ago. She's out of town right now, which is really unfortunate, but she said, as a part of a larger conversation, that she thinks that I am at the forefront of my own demise, which is her very fancy way of saying I am fucking my life up for myself. And so I've never been the kind of person to just sit there and tell somebody, hey, go easy on yourself, practice self-love, practice gratitude, just take a breather. That has never worked for me, and I've never said it to anybody because I just don't think like that. I hate that. I really do hate that with a passion. One thought I do have that I feel like is kind of profound, though, is, isn't it kind of equal parts sad and beautiful at the same time that you are the only thing that is stopping yourself from having a good life? Think about that. I think there's this tendency to think about how we are ruining ourselves by overthinking or engaging in toxic behaviors or whatever the fuck it is, and feel bad for ourselves and feel like, oh, I just can't get over myself, I can't deal with myself. is a much better position to be in than being in a situation where the things that you need to do to make your life better are out of your control. You are in control of yourself. It might not feel like it, and oftentimes I feel like I'm battling myself and like I'm going against an entirely different person. I feel like there are two versions of me is what I'm saying. But the person you want to become is also inside of you. It is not just you and the version of you that hates yourself. The person you want to be is also in there too. But you gotta make space for him. And part of doing that requires giving less respect and time to that version of yourself that is so critical and negative and hateful. So, more practical advice for you, blindcherry. I feel best about myself when I do things that I tell myself I should be doing. Like, I make myself get up at 5:30 in the morning now. I hate doing it. It literally never gets easier. But I know that if I do it, there is going to be, even if it's the smallest part of me, a little voice in my head that says, good job. You did something hard. You did something you said you wanted to do. Show up and respect yourself, because that is what you deserve, and only you can give yourself those things. Go to the gym, go for a walk. Pick something that is not easy for you to do, because I've just found that doing stuff that's hard, it makes me feel a little bit better about myself. I would not say that it makes me love myself and feel like I'm the greatest guy on the planet, but it makes me feel better about myself, and sometimes that is all you need. If you've watched my ASMR for a bad day video, you would know that thing I came up with that was like be a 7 out of 10. Just do 1% a day. That's all. I would also recommend a book called The Courage to be Disliked, specifically the first half of it. It's this concept called, God, I can't remember, I think it's Adlerian psychology. That's what the book is based on. I know I said I was going to go faster, but I just can't because I want to give good advice to everybody. So the book is basically this conversation between a philosopher and like a student, like a kid. And the philosopher basically teaches the kid about this Adlerian psychology, this way of thinking about the world. And one of the concepts is that there's no such thing as trauma, which I don't know if I agree with that. I don't, but bear with it. There's no such thing as trauma, and all the feelings that we have serve a purpose. So if they give an example of like this girl who breaks out in hives, or like she blushes every time she wants to go talk to her crush, and she comes back to the guy and says, I can't talk to my crush. I get hives, my face gets red, and I look ugly, and I get embarrassed. I can't do it. And basically the idea is that you are getting those hives or blushing because you have a fear of rejection. So you're creating this mental state that has a physical outcome to protect yourself. Your feelings have a purpose. They're protecting you from rejection. So I had this really crazy idea that maybe one of the reasons why I have such a low opinion of myself isn't because I actually think that, but because I'm afraid of what I could actually become, because that involves changing and doing uncomfortable things, and I don't want to do that. So I continue to sit here and tell myself that I am inadequate and that I suck to keep myself right here. Not because I think I suck, but because I am afraid of what it would be like to be great and to have to face the challenges that come with being great. I think that makes sense. I think I just ate the fuck out of that, so let's move on. Sometimes I feel like this is written by liotparee, Liotparee. Sometimes I feel like I will never find love, and it's haunting me because this is my deepest fear, but I know that I am not alone in this. How would you overcome this fear, or how would you work with it? Okay, I gotta find you. This is so fucked. Everything got so out of order. with love. Don't ask me how I know, but I know. I have a feeling that you are very young, and so this is a very normal feeling to have. I have struggled with this my entire life because I am a self-proclaimed hopeless romantic, as you know. So I have always worried a lot about whether I would end up with the right person or if I would end up with anybody at all, and how it would happen and how I could make it happen faster, and where it would happen, when it would happen, why it would happen, all that, the who, what, when, where, and whys. You have so much time to find that person. It's okay to worry about it, but don't let it consume you, because that is only going to put you further away from it. I hate to get all spiritual and woo-woo here, but things do really happen a lot easier and more naturally when you stop trying to force them to happen. So, the way that I have overcome those doubts is by trying to become the kind of person that I thought was worth loving and that I wanted to be for that future partner. I have always fantasized about my future wife growing up and what she would be like, what kind of qualities she would have, where we would live, what our kids' names would be, all of it. I've done it all. I do it every day. I got to a point where I kind of thought to myself, okay, I can't make this happen any faster than it's going to happen. I want to focus on being such a good person that when the opportunity comes around and the universe presents me with that person, I will be ready for them. I will be all the things they need me to be. And they will be all the things that I am looking for in them. Basically, focus on yourself. But the way I always did that was framing it in this perspective of focus on myself so that I can be great for that person when they come around. I think that is the romantic approach to going through your personal development era. So, yeah. Be as good of a version of yourself as you can be for that person, but start working on yourself, and I think that's when things will start to fall into place. Okay. This is a long one, and it has a reply that I'm going to read because the advice in the reply is so fucking good that it deserves to be read. This is from B2813. I'm going to kind of paraphrase. I'm about to go to school in the UK, a country that I've never been to. I'm going to be surrounded by strangers with unfamiliar accents and cultures, and I'm so scared about how I'm going to handle the transition. Am I going to be able to keep everything together, or will I crash and burn? Am I going to make the most out of my time there, or waste it? I really am paraphrasing, so if you're listening to this, just know I'm getting the concept still. How much or little will I change? Will that change be good or bad? Especially since I'll be doing things I've never done before while being in a new environment, like paying rent, buying groceries, meal prepping, and going to college. I've always been a person who plans things out and is super methodical and frequent to the point where that's my second nature, and it feels like I can kind of predict the future. But with this situation, there's so much up in the air that I can't control, and I don't know what to expect. It gives me a lot of anxiety. I gotta read a bit of the reply because it's really good. Oh my god, it's really long. But Baby Dinosaur came in with the reply and said, as someone who's lived abroad for lengthy periods of time, this really resonates. Everything you're feeling is completely understandable and valid, but I'm gonna be real with you. The culture shock and everything that comes with that, like the homesickness, panic, anxiety, will hit you like a train. It always does, no matter what you do to prepare. Let yourself feel all those shitty feelings and understand that they're a necessary part of the process, and that doesn't mean your experience is going badly, it just means you're kind of getting used to the new environment. Baby Dinosaur suggestions, which I agree with, are to get into a routine and explore new things and document your days and ask questions and put yourself out there to an unnecessary degree, which I agree with and I will get to in about 2 seconds. Okay. Now, I have never had an experience like this, although I did go to, I've mentioned this before, I went to London by myself last summer for a week, and just a week was such a difficult and challenging experience for me, and I felt so homesick. I felt so out of place. I was so fucking terrified that I actually spent the first day and a half like doing nothing. I spent the whole first afternoon I got there in my Airbnb because I was so scared, and I just like ordered food. And the next day I went and did touristy stuff, and then I just got so anxious that I had to go back to my room. Let me actually pull up what I wrote though, because I want to not forget my notes. Okay. The one thing I do want to say, and that I can say definitively that I know for a fact, sorry it's getting so light over there, is that this is going to be the best experience of your entire life. And that is not me saying that nothing is going to go wrong and that you're going to feel great the whole time. But it is because of the fact that things are going to feel shitty and uncomfortable and so bad at certain points that is going to make this the best experience of your life. You are going to take away so many lessons, so many memories, so many experiences, so many new feelings, and you are going to come across so many different puzzles you have never had to solve that, yes, in those moments, it is going to be very difficult to deal with. But I think once you get past those first couple weeks, like Baby Dinosaur said, and kind of sit in the fact that you're going to be uncomfortable, it is going to get progressively and exponentially easier. But I think that is only if you make the effort to do certain things while you're there. Again, just my opinion, but I actually have a story about this that I feel like kind of ties in. So the second night I was in London, like I said, I came back from doing all the touristy stuff, and I was getting really like stressed out and homesick, so I decided to just go to a movie because I thought that would be a good way to distract myself and just get my mind off stuff. So I went to this theater that was like a 30-minute walk from my Airbnb and bought a ticket, bought popcorn, bought a water, and I walked into the theater, and it was just me and one other older guy, and he was in the right corner, right when you walk in. So I just walked over to the left corner, second to last row, and sat down. And the second I sat down, he got up and walked across the theater and sat directly behind me, and it was just the two of us. And I had been so homesick and so upset and so frustrated with how the trip was going that all I wanted was to sit there and just relax and watch something and just get my mind off everything. And so when this older guy came up and sat behind me, which is just really fucking weird, and I knew it was, something felt really wrong. So, like, he was directly behind me and like leaning up close to my seat. I was like, oh my god, like this just isn't my trip. This isn't for me. I shouldn't have done this. I regret this. I should go back home. I should cut my trip early. And I started to walk back, and somewhere along the way, it finally hit me. Like, you have to be willing to almost appreciate how bad some of these first couple days are going to be while you're adjusting if you want this to be a good trip. Because you have a choice when you start to feel uncomfortable and sad and panic and anxious. You can let it consume you, and you can let it ruin this experience you're about to have and be the reason that you go back home and never try it again. Or you can say, wow, this really fucking sucks, and just be like, damn, this is just the way it is, I guess. This is just a really bad day, but I have more days ahead of me, and I will make them better. That was the point in my trip where things actually started to change, and I started to embrace some of the suck, so to say. So, that is my extremely long-winded way of saying it's okay to feel badly. It's gonna happen, and just take that extra second to take a step back and remind yourself this is normal and this is what's going to make it great someday. In terms of more practical advice, get into a routine. I'd say go to a gym or start running. Get a fiction book. Those always distract me. Get a journal, like Baby Dinosaur said. And when you're at school, and I wish I'd done this in college more, because I went to college in my hometown, the opposite of you, and I felt like I knew everybody, so I didn't really try to make friends. But I think a lot of people go new places and they get too scared and don't talk. College is like one of the last times in your life you are going to just be around a bunch of people your age who also want to be friends with you. So really put yourself out there to an unbelievable degree. Like, really try hard to make friends. I hate being definitive when I'm giving other people advice, but really make that effort to make friends. It is going to be worth it, and that'll keep you busy. Okay, next up, and I have given up on going quickly, I've just accepted this. Is social anxiety a forever type of thing? And this is kind of a dumb question, but should I make the first move? That wasn't me saying it was dumb. That's what they said. This user is K3Y, so key, I guess. Nope, those are V's. I'm going blind. Kev, let me pull up your notes, my man. Okay. No. I don't think social anxiety is a forever thing. I don't have terrible social anxiety, but I did used to have some of it, and I think that there are ways to, if not get over it, at least manage it and have power over it. So, my therapist used to give me this analogy when I went through a phase of being really antisocial and not wanting to talk to people at all, of anxiety kind of being like a roller coaster. A roller coaster. So imagine you're on this ride that is your life, and you start going up and up. This roller coaster essentially represents your anxiety. The longer you go without making an effort to talk to somebody or put yourself out there, the higher and higher and higher that roller coaster climbs. And you continue to not talk to people. It gets higher and higher, and eventually you are so far up in the air that you have so much anxiety that it feels literally impossible to even consider the idea of talking to somebody or extending yourself. So I guess my advice is, don't let that roller coaster get too high. The longer you go without trying, the harder it gets. Even on the days you don't want to, just at least try and have a conversation with somebody. It makes such a big difference, whether it's a stranger or a friend or a family member. Putting yourself out there, even in small doses, can make a huge difference in my opinion. And should you make the first move? Absolutely. As long as you're being respectful. As long as you are being respectful, obviously, but there are quite a few romantic advice questions in here, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, but make the first move. Take the chance. Don't let life pass you by. Just do it in a nice way. So, next up, after a water break. Okay, how do I deal with being the odd one out in a trio? And this comes from Mumin Ahadalai 6421. I know I fucked that up, I'm sorry. Okay, let me get to you in here. Alright, so this was actually one of the biggest, thankfully that means I had a really good childhood, but one of the biggest struggles I had growing up was my best friend of my entire life. We've known each other since we were born. Around high school, he got closer to this other kid, who I was also very close with, but this other kid was my best friend's best friend. So, yeah, I think you get, I'm not going to overcomplicate that. They got really close and started hanging out, and I would try to hang out with them in groups, but it always just felt like I didn't belong. I kind of considered a second best friend, I felt so out of place and shitty. So I can empathize with you. I will say, as it got older, things got easier because I got more friends and other interests, and so when they would hang out without me, I wasn't as beat up about it. So that obviously doesn't help you in this moment. So the other thing I would say is, it kind of depends on the friendship and the situation. Like, are they mean to you about not wanting to hang out? You know, do they make a deliberate effort to exclude you? Or is it just one of those situations like mine where you guys all hang out and get along, but it's clear that two people get along better and you're not one of them? Truthfully, when I used to be really upset about it, at a certain point, I just chose to do things with them less often when I knew it would be the three of us, and that helped. And I just started hanging out with other friends more. But there are definitely a couple times where I wish I would have brought it up. So I think if they're being mean to you, it's worth bringing up because you don't deserve to feel like that. But I think if it's just kind of the way that the cookie is crumbling, just don't take it personally because it's probably not about you. And yeah, I would say just try spending more time doing other things. Okay, next question. Antonio Gonzalez. I met a girl a few months ago and things have been going great, but she's unfortunately going away to college in Texas and I'm staying in New Jersey. We both like each other a lot and want something, but just don't know what to do. Okay, if you don't live in the United States, New Jersey and Texas is in the middle of the country, and New Jersey is all the way up on the East Coast, so that's probably like a few-hour plane ride. Okay, so you guys want something, but you don't know what to do. Oh, baby, do I have some advice for you? Because, well, I will have advice for you that's a little more formal when I find your screenshot and notes in this fucked up ass Google Doc. Okay. The first thing I want to say right off the top is go for it. Take the chance. If you guys are both willing to make it work, at least try it out and see what happens. And that's because I would rather live a life where I tried something and it ended up not working out and it hurt a lot than have to live with the regret of never knowing what things could have been like, because there is always the possibility that things work out. But if you never try, you never know, and that idea just kills me. So I say try it. I say that with so much seriousness. Try it. Okay, so here's the part where I can give you good advice, and I actually feel qualified, is because not only was my first relationship long distance, but the relationship I'm in right now is also long distance. I must have done something terrible in my past life because this is not the way I anticipated my romantic endeavors going. But yeah, do long distance relationships. It was really hard for a lot of reasons, but for all the good and bad that came with it, it has been one of the most formative experiences of my life, and so many of my great young adult and kind of childhood, because I was still kind of a kid, memories came from trips that I took to see my ex and experiences that we got to have together, just being two young kids in college trying to figure it out and make it work. So that's one thing, but the other part of it is, and I know this isn't what you want to hear, but no matter how it works out, it is going to have a big impact on the kind of a guy that you become. And I know that that sounds kind of corny, but I'm going to kind of take a step back. I am glad that I tried as hard as I did to make it work, because a question I ask myself a lot lately is, like, what's the kind of person that I want to be? And when I was younger, I didn't really ask that, but I am glad that I tried to do long distance for as long as I did with that person, because I felt like I was the kind of person who was willing to do anything to make it work. And the fact that you're gone macsasmrx. That sounded bad. Sounds like I just called you a moron. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but yeah, I think you know who I'm talking about. I'm currently dealing with a sort of complicated situation with this guy, and any advice would be appreciated. I'm in high school, so take this as you will. I basically have this friend, and he's in one of my classes. We became friends a few months ago, but I sort of had my eye on him at the beginning of the year and never did anything about it. When we became friends, though, he was talking to this girl, and then sometime into our friendship, they stopped. But even as they were talking, and especially afterwards, we've always had this vibe where it seems like he likes me. All my friends see it, and so do his, but I feel like maybe he doesn't. Question mark. It's just our interactions, walking together, talking, calling all the time and other stuff, and the way he talks to me too, according to my friends. And over time I've started to like him a little bit. Oh, I lost my place. Fuck. Oh my god. Okay. But then he started talking to the... Oh, fuck, my camera. Okay, I had to restart. Okay, Charlie, I'm sorry, I'm getting back here. But then he started talking to this new girl, and he tells me about her and these other girls sometimes, so I can't help but think that he's just messing with me. He doesn't act like this with any of his other girlfriends, so I think it's a little weird that he does with me. And when he tells me about other girls, I just can't be happy for him. I know that sounds horrible. Girl, I get it. Because it makes me uncomfortable since I'm starting to like him. Should I ask him about it, distance myself in order to stop liking him? And in all honesty, is he playing me? I'm just super confused. Alright, here we go. Oh my god, my ass is breaking on this office chair. Okay. This was my first note. I'm gonna read it. Girl, don't shoot me if I'm wrong, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I think he likes you too. But one thing I will say is this is firing up the angsty high school romantic in me to the absolute max. This sounds so exciting, and I know it's nerve-wracking, but I know you feel excited too, and that is the best feeling ever. So, I guess my question to you is, what would you even ask him if you were to bring this up to him? Would it just be straight up like, do you like me? Or, I'm trying to gather from this if he's still talking to this one girl that he mentioned to you and like playing the field. Okay, this is where I just go straight up and say, I think you should just bring it up to him. I know I'm older now, and I very much remember how it felt when I was in a situation like this, and I was your age. In fact, for me, it was in 8th grade. It was this girl I grew up with, and I always liked, but I never brought it up to her, and I think she kind of figured it out, but I never said anything to her. And honestly, looking at it 10 years later, I wish I had, because kind of to relate to what I was saying to the last post is, I would just rather take the chance and, open up the possibility of something great happening than always live in that, like, perpetual state of anxiety and uncertainty, because that's what I did with this girl from middle and high school, and I kind of regret it looking back at it now. Obviously it didn't ruin my life, but you know what I'm saying. I know that feeling of liking somebody and not being sure how they feel, and like sitting in that pocket of kind of living in a fantasy land where you imagine what things would be like if you told him and he liked you back, or just what things could be like, and getting excited to talk because you don't really know what it means. But there comes a point where I feel like that just starts to harm you, and so maybe you have a higher tolerance for it than me, but I think that the odds are he'll probably want to be friends with you no matter what. But judging from what you're saying, I feel like he actually likes you, so I'd say go for it, girl. I think life is too short. The other day I was driving up to Lake Tahoe with my best friend, and we were trying to start thinking about a trip to Europe that we could take next year, and obviously that had nothing to do with you, but my point is, I think you just gotta try it out. And it's fucking terrifying, but either way, you will survive. So, yeah, I'm invested now though, so you gotta let me know if you do try it out, what happens. And if you don't, it's okay. I think that sometimes things unfold over time as well. Alright, next up, southernbellewhisper says, consider my ex was a classic narcissist. I want to know how to relinquish his control on my life. Even though we're separated, our past and what he did to me still haunts me, and I want to know, in your opinion, what I can do to just let it all go. Okay. Truthfully, I don't think you're ever going to be able to let it go completely, and that can either be your greatest weakness for the rest of your life, or it can be your greatest superpower. Let me explain in the form of a personal anecdote. So, I remember you commented on another video, and you're talking about how this was your husband, so obviously I haven't been in a relationship that serious, a marriage, but I dated my ex for 4 years, and it was pretty serious, obviously, and things deteriorated over time, whatever. But at the end of it, when I was finally on my own and had to deal with everything and go through the breakup, I did spend a considerable amount of time feeling like I was a victim of a situation. And it just got to a point where I realized that if I just hold on to this forever and think about what she did to me and how she wronged me and how I wish I had behaved differently, I'm never going to move on. So I can either let it do that to me, or I can take all the shit that I went through with this person and use it to become a better person, and the type of person who wouldn't stand for that situation again, and the type of person who can get into another relationship that is going to be so much healthier and with such a better partner. I hope that all makes sense. So I'm not saying create a new life for yourself out of spite, but I am saying I feel like those feelings of negativity and resentment towards somebody that you're no longer dating can be used as fuel to try and make a better life for yourself, because, bro, at the end of the day, this is your life, not theirs. And if you sit there and let yourself continue to be consumed by things they did, you are letting them win, if that's the way you want to think about it. So, don't let them win, southernbellewhisper. I remember you said, I think you said you're still really young, so you have so much time. Take this experience and let it turn you into an incredible person who would never let themselves get into that type of situation again. Do it for yourself, because that is all who matters in this situation. Okay. Autumn Seibold 6252 says, I have been with my current boyfriend for a little over 5 months. He's amazing and reassuring and sweet and gentle. This is my longest relationship I've ever had, and all my past relationships I've been broken up with either 2 months in, 5 months in, or even 3 weeks into dating. I feel as though I have abandonment issues in I feel as though I have abandonment trauma in romantic relationships. Now that my boyfriend and I have made it this far, I constantly catch myself overthinking or jumping to conclusions in my head, scared that he's going to get bored of me and leave. I definitely feel like I have an anxious attachment style. How do I heal this? I know it's okay to ask someone for reassurance, but I don't want to do it too much and become a burden. And I know I need to work on healing myself and not expect him to heal me. I just don't know how or where to start. Somebody responded to this and said something I like. Anka ASMR said, you're similar to my boyfriend. He has abandonment issues. I love him and I'll always reassure him. Try to just enjoy being in the moment and not overthink as much. You're not here to entertain anybody, and if they get bored of you, they just weren't your person. Someone who truly loves you will never get bored of you and will always be willing to give you reassurance. Okay, Anka, you ate that. Now, let's go to... Oh, goodness gracious, where are you in my notes? Okay. Hold on, I swear I have you. Okay, turns out you were literally right where I started and I just reasons, and that manifested itself in the form of me really wanting a lot of reassurance, and I felt so annoying and so insecure. Like, somehow getting reassurance only made me feel more insecure because I knew I shouldn't be asking for it. So I get that. One thing I would ask is if you've brought this up to your boyfriend yet, because I feel like you probably have, but kind of like what Anka said, the right person isn't going to be mad at the fact that you might have doubts or past experiences that make you a little more hesitant. They will be understanding, and it sounds like your boyfriend is understanding. So I would definitely bring it up with them and just be open about it so that you guys are on the same page. But the next thing I want to bring up is this idea. Focus on what you can touch. So, what do I mean by that? I have used this for moments when I feel really stressed out. Like, we have granite countertops here, and so whenever I start to get really freaked out or anxious about shit in my life and I feel like I'm getting close to spiraling, I'll go and put my hands on the cold granite countertop and just focus on the things that are around me in a physical sense. How I mean this for you is a little more metaphorical. Focus on what you can touch in the sense that you should be focusing on what is in front of you in the relationship. It sounds like you are in a healthy situation with a guy who cares about you and reassures you and, likes or loves you. So focus on those things because those are the things that are real and tangible and in front of you. It is totally okay to have the doubts and stress that you are experiencing. But when moments like that arise, I would suggest that you focus on all the great parts of your relationship that are actually happening. Like you guys hanging out or having a great conversation or look at pictures of you together. These things that are real, that exist in your relationship. I hope that makes sense. Okay. I'm a teen. This comes from high-se6jq. I'm a teen and I've known this guy my whole life. I've had a thing for him for years and he's always bounced around 2 girls for years. He always let on that he was bi, but never was extremely open about it, probably because of his parents. Anyways, he's been in a relationship for a few months now, but he started showing signs that he might like me, suggesting that we FaceTime and throw a party, and when I told him about a particular pair of swim shorts that are extra small, a size too small for me, he needed to see how those fit, in quotes. I'm lost, please help. Okay. Well, the first thing I would say is if he's in a relationship, I would steer clear of this entire situation until he is not, because I don't know you, but I imagine that you are the type of person who probably doesn't want to be somebody else's affair or a home wrecker. Those are not good situations to put yourself in. So, if he's still dating that person, I would just leave it alone for the time being, but let's say he stops dating them and he still does this. I said this earlier to Charlie, but I really hope her name isn't Charlize, or I fucked up, but I think you just gotta bring it up at a certain point, because I hate uncertainty. I hate being in a situation with somebody where I don't know how they feel about me, and yes, it's exciting, but there's always that point where exciting starts to turn into anxiety and dread and insecurity, and then bad things happen. So, no matter what happens, I feel like it's worth bringing up because it could be the start of something really great, or it could give you the clarity you need to move on to somebody better, which isn't fun to think about, but it's the truth. So, how would you deal with overthinking in a relationship, like the avoidant attachment type? This one came from Masha ASMR 3522. this is one of those things that you learn through experience, and that is never a fun answer to hear, but I just feel like it's one of those things that you learn when you enter into relationships or situations with people, and you overthink things and leave them, and you realize over time that you didn't really have a good reason to do that. But that is kind of longer term advice, so I guess I wish I had more context for your situation. Like, what are the things you think about? Like, if you're talking to somebody or dating somebody, do you think about if you could be doing better, or if they're the right person, or I don't know, like, what are those questions that you ask yourself? I feel like are the first step you can take, because I feel like that might point you in a different direction, whether it's I feel like there's somebody better for me, or I don't think this is the type of person I want to be with. And if you take it deeper, like, why am I asking that? There might be an answer at the end of that. That's called, I think, laddering in psychology or something. At the same time, though, that's risky, because if you are an overthinker like me, and you have a tendency to just ask yourself questions into oblivion, that can be a slippery slope, so do that with caution. But the other thing I would say is that if she makes it this far into the video, this is going to give her flashbacks, and she'll probably be annoyed at me, but I did this with my girlfriend. When we started talking, I really overthought things, because I did not expect to meet somebody like her as soon as I did after my last relationship, and I had kind of resigned myself to thinking that I was going to be single for the next, like, 5 or 6 years. And so, when I met her, she didn't live in the same place as me, so I was like, what the fuck? How am I dating somebody long distance again? I told myself I would never do that again, and I was confused, because, like I said, I thought that I was supposed to be alone for a while, and that I should just focus on myself and achieve all these other things, and it really got in the way of things. And unfortunately, it just took me some time to realize that I wasn't asking anything, one, that I could answer, and two, I was going against my own feelings and the things that were in front of me. So again, maybe like what I said to the last person, focus on what you can touch. Thinking is like the root of all evil for me, and so focus on what's in front of you and how that person makes you feel, and maybe still ask yourself those questions that you ask when you're overthinking, but focus on what's in front of you is, I guess, what I would say. And I think it's just something that you learn over time, sadly. So, yeah, I hope that was a satisfying enough answer. I hate telling people, like, oh, you'll figure it out, but that's how I figured it out with my girlfriend, was just realizing that those doubts and concerns that I were having were, one, all made up in my head, and two, conflicting with how I actually feel. So, sometimes the heart is a better choice than the head. Okay. I'm choosing between two colleges right now. This is from benseifter. I'm choosing between two colleges right now, and I can't make up my mind. One where I stay close to my family, and the other is 4 hours away. How should I go about making my decision? Okay, so where the fuck is your question? Oh my gosh. Hold on, Ben. I know you're here. Okay. You're a little further down. You're a little further. Okay, there you are. Well, in terms of practical advice, I would start by doing, like, the very basic pros and cons of each. Like, from the way you framed your question, it kind of makes it seem like the only thing, or at least the most important thing you're taking into consideration about this decision is how close or far away your family is from each campus that you want to go to. So, if you haven't already, I would ask yourself the other questions. I'm kind of guessing you did, but stuff like, what do I like about each school? to study, etc., etc. But this question hits home for me because I stayed in my hometown for college, which is like literally 15 minutes from my family. But I got into some other schools all over the country, and I really, really, really wanted to go away. And I was really resentful over the fact that I had to stay. Although it did work out for the best in the end, I have always encouraged people in this kind of a situation to go away and at least try it for a year or two, because first of all, people never think about this when they go to college, but you can always transfer. Everybody likes to think that they're picking the one school that they're going to go to for all 4 years and that there's no other way but to do that. You can always transfer. And in fact, a lot of kids who went away did end up transferring back to UNR and still enjoyed their college experience where they were. But all the friends I have that went somewhere else for college really loved it. They all made a ton of new friends and had incredible experiences. And yes, like the guy who's going to be moving to the UK for college, I think it was a guy, the person, it's going to be difficult, but it's such a fulfilling and unique experience to get to move away and be in this little world that is a college campus and have a new experience. Also, I don't know if you meant 4-hour flight or drive, but 4 hours is not too far away. You could definitely come home at least once a semester, and I know it's hard to be away from family, but like I said, you can always transfer back or take a gap semester, things like that. So don't look at it in terms of all or nothings. But yeah, I think if you have the opportunity financially and it is a situation where you can come back home relatively easily, it is so worth it to go away, just from what I've seen in other people and what I wish I'd done. Okay. Next up, how do you keep the spark alive in long-term relationships? I'll read that again. And this was asked by alexaschnarr. How do you keep the spark alive in long-term relationships? Okay, here are my notes for you. Truthfully, this was a difficult thing for me in my last relationship because it was 4 years, as I've said. And it was a difficult relationship for lots of other reasons, but it did get to a point where I kind of felt like we were doing the same few things over and over again, and the things almost started to feel like a little bit dull and boring. And so I feel like I can empathize with you if that's what you're feeling. I think one really important thing to do is accept this idea that the word sparks, what you think of as excitement in a relationship, is probably going to change over time. I know this is hard to hear for a lot of people. It's been hard for me to even accept myself, but relationships evolve over time with the couple, the two of you, and you are not always going to feel that same buzz of excitement and love and feeling like you're drunk and levitating around the person that you felt at the start. I think, one, as you get older, relationships change because you become more mature and independent. But I think even if you've been with somebody for a long time and you have grown up, over time, that definition of what is exciting and fresh and keeps things fun in a relationship is going to look way different than what it did when you guys were 22 or 18 or 16 or 14 or however old you were when you started dating. That isn't me saying, just accept the fact that things aren't going to be as exciting as they used to be, because I do think that in a healthy relationship with the right person, things should still be exciting. It's just a different form of things. My more practical advice, which is probably all you wanted, and I just rambled for way too long, is to try having new experiences together. Things that neither of you have done before, or things that maybe one of you has done that you really want to show the other, because I think if you just fall into the same habits that you've had for years as a couple, I think only a very specific type of couple or relationship would enjoy that. I think people things. And so doing something neither of you have experienced, whether it's a vacation or a weekend getaway or a restaurant or, I don't know, a new park to walk in or a hike to take or a book to read as a couple, those things keep things exciting. And I think healthy relationships can evolve with that excitement and still be satisfied. Okay. Oh my goodness, we still have a lot. Okay, let's just keep going. What do you do when you've been feeling very stuck for a long time? And that question was asked by jamespader. Jamespader. James, let me pull up my notes. Let me find you. God, this is just a mess. Okay, this has been my biggest lesson of this year, which is if I feel stuck, whenever I have a new idea, just any idea to try something different from what I've been doing at all, I just make myself try it. And that was the product of me knowing that I was stuck and having ideas about different things to do for months or even years, literally years, and not doing them because I didn't want to be uncomfortable and I didn't want to fuck up whatever I was thinking about trying. And I liked the idea of it more than actually doing it. That is not a fun place to be, and that will not get you unstuck. Perfect example of this is running. I always thought about what it would be like to run and how far I could run and what my times could be and the cool shoes I'd get and how my legs would get bigger and more muscular, all that shit. And I thought about it, and it was always just this like far off dream I had, and I started doing it and I really liked it and I was glad I did it. Another example, reading fiction books, actually, because I was obsessed with self-improvement for a long time. I thought about doing it for a few months and kind of put it off and off and off. And for those months, I felt stuck, which is what I should have said about the running thing. I just felt bored with what I was doing at the gym. I felt like physically I was plateauing. But with books, I felt like I was mentally plateauing. I was getting tired of reading the same things over and over again. And I had ideas, but I wouldn't try them. So if you feel stuck, force yourself to sit somewhere without your phone and get bored, and you will inevitably come up with new creative ideas and go try them, whether it's a new hobby, something small like walking in a different direction when you go on your daily walk, or reading a different type of book, or doing a different type of workout, or something, a new type of job, living in a new city. If you have the idea, I think you owe it to yourself to try it, because you have good ideas. We all have good ideas. But what makes them good is when we try them. Okay, next up. Any advice for this comes from IDK Georgia 7156. Any advice for people in long distance relationships? I live in Ontario and my boyfriend is in North Carolina, and it's so hard. Okay. Oh baby, do I have advice for you? Let me pull it up though. Gotta look at your profile picture. There you are. Okay, first piece of advice. If you're not doing it already, because my girlfriend and I are doing this right now, and it's so fucking fun, I love it. Buy the same book and read it together on FaceTime or on the phone. It's so easy to feel disconnected and detached from your significant other when you're not in the same place most of the time. And something about reading a book and being in this same imaginary world together, which is what I imagine it's probably like when you play video games with your partner. It's fun, and it gives you something to talk about and something to look forward to, and when the book ends you can get another one, so it's like a fresh, renewable experience. Next thing I would recommend, plan your trips ahead of time so you guys have something to look forward to. Obviously, like that's if you can afford to buy plane tickets ahead of time, but another thing I would recommend, because I'm trying not to just recommend the typical, like, oh, communicate and advice like that, I know you know that. that's not in either of the places that you live, or saving up to move in together, or things like that. I feel like having a goal is really nice. It just gives you guys something to do with one another that's like a challenge for the relationship. And it takes your mind off of the challenge that is just being in a long-distance relationship, which was my last note. Just accept that it's going to be hard. I'm sure you have, but remind yourself that it's worth it, and remind yourself why you got into this within reason. Last piece of advice, though, is if you guys are in an argument, just get on the phone. Don't text about it. That never works. Whether you're in the same place or not, just get on FaceTime and talk it out like grown-ups. I had a crush on this girl, but I moved. Oh, this is from elliotjukes. I had a crush on this girl, but I moved away, and we agreed it wouldn't work out, but we still talked for a few months afterwards, and I stopped talking to her about a year ago, but we've started talking again, and I think I still love her. What do I do? Elliot, you know exactly what I'm gonna say to you, and I honestly think that you might have just wanted to hear me say it, which is fine. Sometimes we need to hear people say the things we want to hear to go do them, but brother, you gotta take the chance. You gotta tell her how you feel, and if she's willing to try and make it work, you gotta take it. You have to try it, I think. It's the same thing I said earlier. Do not let life pass you by. Take the chance. It is what makes life so exciting. That could be the person that you're gonna marry. That could be your wife. That could be the start of some of the best memories of your childhood or your young adulthood or your life, however old you are. There are so many things that are wonderful that can happen. Yes, bad things can happen too, but so many exciting things that have the potential to take place when you take chances in life. And there's absolutely nothing that can happen if you decide not to take the risk. So, Elliot, go for it. You have to. I'm telling you. And you have to give me an update because I'm invested. Okay. This one is a little long and it comes from chrisax9259. And now we are battling against the clock that is my camera battery, and I have to go play pickleball in 30 minutes. I feel disappointed in myself. I know what I have to do. I could write a list of the top 10 things I could do every day to make my life better. There's simple things like waking up early, getting sunlight, drinking water, limiting my screen time, etc. However, I do nothing. Every night I go to bed and thinking that I'm failing at life. I have a hard time keeping the promises I make to myself. I'll start a good habit and drop it after 5 days. So in the long term, that makes me not believe I can achieve anything since I always prove to myself that I give up after the first hardships show up. I constantly complain about how I'm doing nothing to make my life better, and that can sometimes affect the relationship with my boyfriend too. He's the most understanding and patient person, but I just can't stop thinking that in his head he's like, wow, she just complains and she never takes any steps to actually achieve anything. We all know that's not an attractive trait for anyone to have. The last 3 years in uni, I've basically spent them at home in my comfort zone. I fear that my future self will fail at life because my present self can't wake up early and move her body a little bit. This felt like writing in a journal. Good, you got it out. Okay, I took a lot of notes for you. There you are. Okay. First of all, it is okay to feel the ways that you're feeling. I actually also went through a period of like 2.5 years where I was having the same exact thought patterns and struggles just getting started with things. I could never commit to anything, and whenever I did eventually find the courage to do it, I would do it for a couple days, and it would get hard and I would give up and hate myself, and actually I still do it. I ran into that this past week with a different video series I was trying to do. And I definitely relate to the part about feeling super hopeful at night, about like, oh, I'm gonna change everything tomorrow, it's the start of a new day, I'm gonna fix all this shit, and then waking up and being like, fuck, I don't want want to do any of that, and then hating myself for it. So what, in my personal experience, worked for me was, sorry, I gotta sit up. I kind of just got to a breaking point, and I realized that I was just wasting my life, and that it didn't have to actually be that way. And earlier, I mentioned this about, I don't remember, oh my god, I've addressed so many posts at this point, I can't even remember what it was, but feeling depressed or anxious or even spiteful towards yourself and about your life, it can be intoxicating. It's like you romanticize your struggle, and you wake up and you feel like the world is against you and you're against yourself, and somehow you have to find a way to overcome it, but you're just not there yet, and things are so hard, but in a weird way that's beautiful. That is how I used to feel, and sometimes still do. In terms of more practical advice, you mentioned that you have a lot of things that you think about starting, but have a hard time doing any of them. I think you need to lighten the burden on yourself and just pick one thing and try that out. Just one really small thing. What did you say? You said wake up early, get some sunlight, drink enough water, limit my screen time. Just pick one of those things and try it for a week. And this goes back to what I was saying a couple times ago. I've said it a lot in this video, but I think the point where I really started to get better about this was when I would have an idea about what I could do to make my life better, and I wouldn't wait so long to try it. So, these ideas that you have, just try one of them. And I think eventually, if you continue to try them, whether or not you stick with them is not such a big deal. It's about the fact that you show up every day and you at least try one or two things. And I think that if over time you can prove yourself to at least be a person who is willing to try things, whether or not they stick, and you can commit to them, that will give you enough confidence to ultimately stick with one or two or three of these things. And I think from there, once you get the snowball rolling, it's much easier. But I think it's less about proving to yourself that you can do all of these things consistently as a habit, and it's more about proving to yourself that you're willing to try, because I know that version of you is in there. I knew it was in myself, and I just had to bring that bastard out. But you're very well spoken, I can tell from this post, and I can tell you want to try. So just try. Just show up. That is something I have written on my board over here, or I had it written, I took it down for something else, but just show up every day. You don't have to kick ass or do incredible things every day. Just show up and try. Okay. Sombra Colomar 7254 says, my ex of about 3 years cheated on me with another girl. He insists we were never officially a thing and that the girl knew about me. I didn't know about her. Anyways, they've been together for about 3 years or less now too, and I just can't get over it. I'm unhappy and I want them to be unhappy, which is kind of bad. Okay, hold on. I gotta get your notes. There you go. For starters, I think it's normal to feel that way, to have that spite and resentment and anger. But I'm gonna shoot straight with you. 3 years is a long time. I think you are ready for something new, and maybe this will be the impetus for that, but I think you've already had the thoughts, and maybe this is your chance to get started. If you want to think about it in this, like, me versus them competition sense, bro, the longer you spend thinking about it and letting it ruminate and ruin your life and make you spiteful, the more you're just letting them win. Like, they are winning if you're letting them get in your head all day still. Don't give them the satisfaction. The more mature answer I would give is that you have the ability to channel this anger into something good for yourself. A new chapter of your life with new hobbies and interests and friends, and eventually a new relationship where you don't put up with this kind of shit. And so, like I said earlier, I think that you can turn something that is originally about wanting to get over somebody else into something about yourself. This might start as you not wanting them to be happy, but I think you can turn it into something about wanting you to be happy. But you gotta get started on doing stuff. Whether it's putting yourself out there or getting new hobbies, whatever it is, just get started on it. And I think over time your definition of what you want will change. What do you think when a man is uncertain about you and your future together? Like, what are men's thoughts? LOL. And that comes from Marshmallow Fluff 34. Okay, obviously not a lot of context on this one, so I guess the first question I would ask is, if you're with a guy and you think he's uncertain, what do you think is making him feel that way? Like, has he said something to you, or are you just guessing that he's uncertain because of how he's acting? Anyways, my more straightforward and less hopeful answer is that anytime I've been around somebody, a guy, like one of my friends, who has been uncertain about things, that has typically been a sign that he does not want to be in the relationship anymore, and that he either is staying in it because he's afraid to be alone, or because he's just comfortable and doesn't want to change, or he's plotting his next steps. But that is so context dependent that I feel like without more info, I don't want to give you a recommendation or definitive answer. But I feel like a little bit of uncertainty is normal and maybe even to be expected when we're young, but I think it can be communicated and turned into a healthy conversation and not a pain point that constantly exists, is what I'll say. Okay, so I've got one more community post and like 6 emails, but my camera's about to die, so I'm gonna do them in the dark, and I'm still gonna put up who I am referring to in text on the screen, I guess. So we're about to go dark, but I'm still gonna be talking, so bear with me. Actually, I do need to text my friends that I'm gonna run a little late on pickleball. Okay. Yikes. Give me just about... Okay, here we go. Last YouTube community post. Michaela4593 says, my ex/partner, I don't know, but he got into drugs after I had a miscarriage. He went straight into meth. He eventually got charged and sent to jail for assault, but when he got out, he tried to convince me to do it and got angry, do drugs, and shoved me when I disagreed. I became scared of him, but I stayed. He went back to jail because he breached his condition. He told me to wait and stay, but I haven't been doing that. I cut all ties with his family so they won't update him about me. I won't answer anything he sends or anyone he asks to message me because I'm scared. I was never perfect, but I think the drugs changed everything. I could put up with the alcoholism and abuse, but I can't get it out of my head. We just turned 20. I don't know if I'm making the right choice staying away when he told me to stay. I'm afraid he'll try to contact me when he gets out, and I don't know how to be strong when he does. Okay, this is obviously very heavy, and I do not have experience with basically any of this, so there goes my camera. Michaela, I'm still talking though, don't worry. But I will still give some version of an opinion here. I'm sure you've heard this, but you should not be putting up with any of that. I know nothing about your life and your situation, but it sounds extremely toxic and unhealthy, and I know that's easy for me to say, but I don't think anybody deserves that. Even if you were far from perfect yourself in your relationship, that does not mean that you deserve to be treated terribly in any capacity. I actually experienced this with my ex. I had a really bad guilt complex. Like, I liked to make everything my fault and myself and all the blame on myself because I didn't want her to feel hurt or like things were her fault, even if they were. And so I tolerated a lot of things I shouldn't have because I said that it was my responsibility to make them better. The result of that was not only that I continued to stay in a very bad relationship, not bad, or like not very bad, okay, but not healthy relationship. And my opinion of myself really, really went down the drain. And so, this is a very difficult concept, and I still don't think I've got it figured out, but I think you need to remind yourself of what you deserve fundamentally as a person, and that is not to be abused or subjected to assault and harassment. No matter what you did, nobody deserves that. And it's not even about you being able to do better or find somebody else. It's just about your life and your safety. You deserve more than that, and you have an opportunity to move on from this, and I think you should take it. I think one question to ask yourself that I would ask myself is, do I want to be doing this a year from now? Do I want to be in this situation? Do I want to be feeling these same feelings? And if your answer is no, and it probably is no, then that's your answer. Okay, time for our emails. So, this first one, and if anybody's listening at this point, that is crazy, and thank you, but, yeah, this first one comes from, this person has a pseudonym, Carnation. Hi, Jacob. I have been dealing with a lot of stress when it comes to deciding my career path. I recently obtained a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, but I've had teaching high school math stuck in the back of my mind for a while. Any advice on what to do? Yes, I do have some advice. The first thing I would say is start as a part-time tutor. I imagine you've probably got bills to pay and that you at least want to try out a job in the field of chemical engineering. So I think you should try something and, get a job that keeps the water running, so to speak. But if you know you like something and you are this young, I think you owe it to yourself to try it. So if you know that you have an interest in teaching high school math, I think get a part-time, like a little side gig as a math tutor and try it out and see how you feel about it. And if you really like it as much as you think you might, then this is obviously very easy to say and much more difficult to do, but I think you gotta go for it. We are on this planet for such a short time, and so many people never find the thing that they are truly passionate about, either because they just get unlucky or because they never take risks. But I think if you try this math tutoring thing out, or whatever you end up doing, you dip your feet in the water and you see that you like it, you should go for it. Because you never know where it could take you. You could become a professor or open your own tutoring business where you teach math. Whatever. I say don't worry so much about the money now, as long as you can afford to continue living. Start out as a tutor and see where it takes you. Yeah. Okay. Next email. I'm not going to read who this came from, but I think they will probably know. So, I know this topic isn't for everyone, but with it being Pride Month and I am struggling mentally and have always struggled mentally with accepting myself and gay and always praying the gay away. My guy friends all stopped talking to me when I came out, and now I find myself trying so hard to fit in and make guy friends that I do anything, even if it means lessening myself just to fit in with them. Any advice or encouragement could help. To add to this, I was jumped for being gay in high school, so I feel like that's why I try to fit in so hard as well. First of all, I am so sorry that happened to you. I cannot imagine how painful and isolating of an experience this has been for you, and I really hope things get better. Obviously, this is something that I can't even begin to imagine. I haven't gone through any of this, so I want to be respectful in terms of the advice I try to give. I think this sense that you don't want to be friends with people who don't accept you for who you are as a person. And yes, that means that you will be spending more time alone in the near future, and that really fucking sucks, but I think if you're comparing the levels of pain, it is much more painful to be around people who dislike you and disrespect you and don't treat you right than it is to deal with the pain that comes from being alone. I know there are moments where that pain from being alone feels unbearable, but I think in the long run that's the right decision. One thing I will say is that when I went through a period where I felt very isolated myself, albeit for different reasons, something that actually helped me a lot was a therapy support group. I only went for a couple weeks because I was just really going through it and I couldn't commit to it, but I was around a lot of people who were very much like me in terms of the things that they were going through, and I realistically could have seen myself being friends with almost any of them. And they were very respectful, obviously, and sensitive, and in touch with their emotions, and could understand my situation. So, if you know of any support groups, or maybe you could look into a therapy practice that offers support groups, I would look into that. Okay. Next email. I'm going to change the name. Help, please. My name is Sarah. I'm 24, and I've been best friends with this guy I met in middle school for 8 years. He was always very keen on texting every day and flirted with me all the time. He's the where's my hug at kind of guy. That's funny. After 2 years of friendship, he told me he had feelings for me. I always knew, but I hoped if I ignored it, he would stop acting that way. When I said I didn't feel the same, we continued on as just friends. Oh, sorry, I had to drink water. But the flirting and the jokes didn't stop. He used to get drunk and write these long-ass texts professing his love, and when I didn't reciprocate, he'd get mad and say that women don't like good guys. I kept on being his friend because I actually believed him and felt bad because I wasn't attracted to him. When he got his first girlfriend at 19, he told her that he used to have a crush on me, and she straight up told him to choose between me and her. So he stopped talking to me and didn't tell me why. Almost a year went by, and he broke up with her, and that same day he started messaging me again and flirting. This motherfucker. I told him I forgave him, and we kept on being friends. It's been almost 2 years since that happened, but I still feel like shit about it. I honestly did not forgive him and have this weird feeling about him and our friendship. I feel like he only keeps me as his friend in the hopes of sleeping with me. I also feel pressure to get together with him from some of our other friends who know how he feels and know that we've been close. Do you think I'm overreacting? Did he make the right decision choosing his girlfriend? Was he ever really my friend, or did he just want to fuck me? Sending lots of love and light from Brazil. That is so cool. Wow, Brazil, that is so cool. Okay, I'm gonna keep it straight and simple. I think if he's still making passes at you, you need to confront him about it, and I would like to think that people can change and grow up, so maybe he'll grow out of it, but a lot of times people don't, so it's, in my opinion, not worth being uncomfortable and feeling badly about yourself for this long just to appease him. I think if he's a real friend to you, he should have respected you not being interested in him the first time, but he should definitely respect it the second time if you bring it up again, and if he doesn't, I think that's a sign of his intentions. I like to be optimistic and think that people can mature and move past stuff like this, but I think it's worth having a conversation because you still don't feel good about yourself and how you handled it, and it seems like he still kind of does the same stuff, so a real friend will respect your boundaries, guy or girl. Okay, just a couple more. We are so close. Here we go. Hey, I've never sent an email like this, but I really like your videos, and I have a feeling we would get along well in person, which I guess helps a little with this parasocial element of this. Okay. My boyfriend of many years broke up with me in a 10-minute conversation last summer. For context, we're both in our mid-20s. We were planning to move in together, and he seemed to freak out about the commitment, or maybe just fell out of love with me. He never really gave me a reason, and pretty much from the moment he broke up with me, me he seemed to have moved on. We have mutual friends and lived in a small town, so we continued to see each other at social events, which was really awkward and difficult for me. But he was confused by this and why I wasn't as over it as he was, or why it was hard for me to be normal around him and have small talk. He also started seeing someone a month or two after the breakup. I managed to avoid them because I moved out of town earlier this year, but this past weekend I went back to an event that our mutual friends were at, and he and his girlfriend, who he's still seeing, were also at the event. We completely avoided each other and didn't even make eye contact or say hello. He's been totally avoidant since the second our relationship was over, and I don't know how to move forward without the acknowledgement, respect, and mutual processing that I know I'll never get. The story gets much wilder, but I'll keep those details off, so yeah. Anyways, okay. This sounds like a really difficult situation. It took me a really long time to take notes on this and think about how I would respond if I were you. I never want to encourage somebody to get angry or upset or spiteful, but I feel like the fact that he couldn't give you a clear reason for ending things and wasn't respectful enough to have a long conversation after dating for as long as you did, along with the other third fact that he moved on so quickly, kind of shows you that he's not the type of person to give you the respect and acknowledgement you deserve, nor is he the kind of guy you want to be with. And last but not least, nor is he the kind of guy who is going to give you closure in this situation. And that is extremely unsatisfying and fucking annoying, but here's what I think you can do with it. It's really shitty when you have to go through something by yourself, especially when it's in regards to a shared experience that you had with somebody else. But one thing I would suggest right off the bat that really helped me after my relationship ended is going to therapy, because it's a place where you can process these feelings with somebody else instead of by yourself, because I know I used to talk to my friends about it and I would feel annoying, so I'd eventually stop. But I think another part of this, which is also extremely difficult and is going to come in time and is not going to be linear, as I mentioned at the start of this video, in terms of your healing, is that you're going to have to accept that you aren't going to get those things from him, because he is not the type of person to give them to you. And also reminding yourself that you, in this very moment, have everything you need to move forward. You have yourself and the experience, and that's all you need. It's going to take some time. I mentioned this in my 5 life lessons video, I believe, but time heals all wounds. And I think they heal quicker if you do things to help yourself. And so, I think talking to somebody, if you can, would be great. I think journaling your way through this would be very helpful. But I think it's just going to be this long and painful, but very fulfilling process of realizing that you don't need him to say those things to you or give you reasons to feel better about this. And truthfully, even if he were to give you those reasons, be real with yourself. Would they actually make you feel better? Because you would still be in the same position, and you probably would not be satisfied with his answers unless you did something really fucked up, and I think you would have already known that by now. So, that is my response. Second to last email. Hi Jacob, love your channel and think this is such a cool idea. I know you like to talk about love, so here's an issue I've been mulling over. Context, I'm 20 and I live in, I'm gonna change the city. I live in New York City. I've been taking a year off before school and it's given me a lot of time to think about this. I have a straight male friend who I initially, about 5 years ago, had a massive crush on. I need water, I'm sorry. It went away after a few months, but I really love him a lot now, and we are incredibly comfortable with each other emotionally and physically. He said the other day that we literally have no secrets, and when he sleeps over, because we live in different cities, we sleep in the same bed and often end up cuddling. Gulp. Lately, I've been reflecting on our friendship, and I'm really trying to discern whether how I feel about him is just unrequited romantic love or purely platonic. The main thing that got me thinking about it is the fact that a bunch of our mutual friends have been asking if we're hanging out or not. I'd love to know your thoughts on platonic versus romantic love, boundaries boundaries in different gender friendships, etc. Like, imagine if either of us were seeing each other, our partners would probably be really uncomfortable. Am I that horrific girl best friend trope? That's funny. Also, some random other thoughts. Do you think you can be in love with two people at once? How do you know if you're in love? And does it feel different every time? Okay, here we go. I'm literally getting on a knee. That's how bad my ass hurts. Okay, this is a really good story and set of questions, and I would love to know the outcome to this because I'm so interested now. Okay, here are my thoughts. I gotta be honest, I don't know what people are like where you live, but in my experience, that sounds very much like it has some romance involved in it from both sides, from you and the guy. So, I think one of the best ways I can explain this from my experience is that one of my best friends for the last 10 years is a girl, and at no point have we ever, like, slept in the same bed, or cuddled, or, like, crossed any boundaries that you would think of when you think of a traditional friendship. And I know that people are very different, and people's ideas of physical boundaries and relationships can vary broadly around the world and through different generations, but to me, it kind of sounds like if I were the guy in this situation, the only reason I would be behaving like that is because I liked you, and I wasn't saying anything about it because I was either scared it isn't mutual, or I didn't want to risk losing the friendship. So, do with that information what you will, but I'm so curious, like, if you had any other conversations about this with him, I guess I would suggest the same thing as I did earlier. If you really like this person enough, I think it's worth having a conversation. It sounds like you guys are close enough friends to the point where if it wasn't mutual, eventually you could move past it, even if things had to change a little bit, and still have a great friendship. Or, no, actually I don't think there's an or, because you said you really love him, so I feel like if you feel that for him romantically, it's worth bringing up. Yeah, so, oh wow, that was actually the last email. Oh my goodness, that was such a long video, fuck. If any of you made it to the end, oh my goodness, you guys are psychotic. Almost as psychotic as I am for whispering for 2 hours, but thank you so much. I really have nothing else to say because I think I've said everything that a person could possibly say at this point, so I will leave you with a thank you. I love you guys. I hope some of my advice helped,